of splash, on the pages of history.
Well, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, so far the discussion has been that we're talking about aliens and whether we should or should not be afraid of them. Stephen Hawking said that maybe we should. But the thing is, why aren't we discussing the other side of the coin? And that is, if there are other forms of life around, we could be the most intelligent, the most powerful, the most advanced of the lot. It could be the other way around, couldn't it?
Well, that could be the case, but
we're always assuming they're smarter than us and deadlier than us.
The numbers don't add up that way. If you assume that there are all these millions of planets out there potentially to have life, the chances that we are the most highly developed is pretty remote. But to get back to the point I was trying to make, if you expect these people, these beings, to come here and to immediately be able to intuit what it is that they want, that in fact may be the most frightening thing of all for most people. The utter alienness and the utter inability to be able to contact them at any level may be the most difficult thing for people to accept. When you talk to people who at least portray that they've had alien contacts, and you may believe or not believe that, oftentimes it is the utter alienness and the inability to really understand the intentions of these creatures that are really the most frightening and I guess you'd have to say disabling aspects of the whole encounter.
Are there lessons, though, that we can learn from human history, do you think? Are there parallels? Are there situations which might give us a clue as to motivations and the best way to react?
Well, I don't necessarily think that the lessons given by imperial colonizing powers are necessarily going to apply in this situation. Perhaps the most interesting type of parallel might be the attempt for humans to communicate with dolphins and the utter inability to find some level to actually communicate at that would make it possible for communication to occur.
So we would be the dolphins in that parallel.
Yeah, I think that we would probably fit into that, although, it depends upon how smart you think dolphins are, I guess.
Gordon Matthews, do you think that maybe anthropologists should be in the front line when we do make contact, that they're the people best placed to attempt this kind of communication with alien forms?
Well, probably so. Much thought has been generated as to how you would communicate, and astrophysicists and so on, for example, the plaque that I believe was on Jupiter, I'm not sure, maybe it was on Voyager, the plaque that showed the hydrogen atom and so on, that was giving scientific data as the one means of interspecial communication or communication with extraterrestrials. Maybe that's the case. On the other hand, if extraterrestrial civilizations do have anything in common with human civilizations, there are things like languages that would have to be learned. We're in the realm of imagination, and it's fascinating. I mean, one thing that I think will happen if extraterrestrial societies are contacted in my lifetime, suddenly human beings and all of their divisions of race and ethnicity are going to vanish. I certainly hope I'm alive to see it. I mean, in a sense, this is a strange discussion today because it's like agnostics versus believers, and it's very interesting. And I count myself as that agnostic, but still, I totally agree with your believer people here, like Moon and like Neil. I certainly hope it's contacted because it's going to have a massive change in human consciousness. But I am far more skeptical. I am like your more skeptical guests and thinking, I can't believe it.
But you just said you hope that it would happen in your lifetime. You're not scared? You're not afraid of this?
Why be afraid of anything? Who knows? It's much bigger than us.
If you see all those movies, you should be afraid.
Well, these movies are typical human imaginations.
Can I say something
here? On purpose like this, fearful.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go.
First of all, we must think back to the words of the late psychiatrist Dr. John Mack, Harvard professor. He said that human non-consenting encounters, in other words, people call them abductions, are a socially invisible phenomenon. Now, that is the same thing as 20, 30 years ago when you had child abuse. It was socially invisible, and the doctors would dare not say that a parent had ever assaulted a child. It was just unthinkable at the time. Dr. John Mack has also said that he regards the alien abduction phenomenon as something called a cosmic metamorphosis of the mind, a human consciousness conditioning, an upgrading of the mind. There is this intervention with off-world visitors. It does go on. There are millions of people who testify, and there is a reason for this. And unfortunately, there's the dark side of the coin too, which we wouldn't have time to go into, that they're already here. And you could almost say that there is a colonization going on.
Okay, we've had some interesting response on our email and Facebook, which we'll get to after the news at 9 o'clock. We're going to break for 5 minutes. It's sort of turned philosophical, the discussion in our emails and, as I say, on Facebook. So do drop us a line, backchat at rthk.org.hk. The weather forecast briefly, mainly cloudy today with a couple of rain patches, cloudy with a few rain patches over the next couple of days. 22 degrees at the moment with a relative humidity now of 85%. Welcome back to Backchat. This morning we're picking up on those comments by Stephen Hawking about the best way to react to the possibility of life elsewhere in the universe and how to react if it comes to visitors. They say we better be careful. He cites the example of when Columbus landed in America, which he says didn't turn out well for the Native Americans. What are our best plans? Are the life forms likely to be friendly, or will they be out for what they can get? Joining the discussion with today, we have Philip Hazley, anthropology professor from the Niagara County Community College in the States, Dr. Stephen Hughes, lecturer in astrophysics and physics at Queensland University of Technology in Australia, and with us here in Hong Kong, Neil Gould, founder of the Hong Kong Exopolitics website, director of the Exopolitics Institute, Moon Fung, founder and chairman of the Hong Kong UFO Club and a committee member of the Institute of Ufology, and Gordon Matthews, professor of anthropology at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Some thoughts from listeners. Vic says, it all depends on the type of aliens who land here. If their mindset is the same as the 18th to 21st century Earthlings, yes, it will be a disaster. Just take the case of Hong Kong. First, we were second-class citizens controlled by the British, and now we're second-class citizens controlled by the businessmen and quasi-communists. Bowen says, we don't need to look to outer space. There is a Martian in all of us. When Copernicus founded the model that displaced the Earth from being the centre of the universe, he was a Martian. When Thomas Alfred Tom Denning established the doctrine of equitable estoppel, he was a Martian. When John Maynard Keynes announced that the budget of a nation did not have to be balanced and that public expenditure was the solution to mass employment, he was a Martian. Every time humankind shatters the bounds of an orthodoxy and propounds a new one, human beings might as well be Martians. While contact with aliens from outer space may be hazards, as Professor Hawking warns us, contact with the Asians, with the Martian bring within us, has proved beneficial so far, says Bowen. Interesting thought. Alan says, I'm pretty unhappy that you have taken a serious statement by Stephen Hawking and used it as a hook to introduce the lunatics who think there are aliens among us. If we make contact with aliens, we will all know it. I personally believe that there are alien intelligences elsewhere, but it's just so difficult to travel between the stars that if we get any knowledge of them, it's likely to be ancient radio signals. If warp drives were physically possible, the whole galaxy would have been colonized by whoever invented them first 1 billion years ago. This obviously hasn't happened. Fortunately for us, as Hawking said, we'd be toast, says Alan. Gordon Matthews, will we always just be projecting the human experience, do you think, onto aliens?
Until we meet them. Yes, I think we will, because we have no capacity to imagine. Science fiction is so interesting. I like reading it too, but this is simply what humans are imagining. How can we get into that completely different cosmos of what another being might be? So we will be projecting until we actually encounter extraterrestrial intelligence. Then all of our projections are going to be shattered.
How do you think the world will, if it, hypothetically, if it happened, how do you think we, the global community, would react to it?
Well, one thing that I hope will happen, and we're engaged in hope here, as Moon's been talking about, is that we will come together as never before. Now, the great question, and that Hawking is certainly referring to here, is whether ultimately the intent of any extraterrestrials are malevolent. I personally believe that if there are extraterrestrials, they probably know we're here and don't want to mess with us. Why bother? I don't think, as Moon and as Neil think, that they're here. No, I think they probably are well aware that there is something here. They can tell by the pollution surrounding Earth, among other things.